Into common fitness. Circles. No. Knee sleeves. Hip circles. Straps.
Hip circles are a great thing for it. So we're live. Is this so people think it's frozen?
I don't. There's nobody here. We should do the 12 o'clock on Friday.
Yeah.
Because remember, loads of people at 12 o'clock. So I think we got like New Zealand people and Australian people, and we got the American people.
Yeah.
And then some of the Asian people, maybe, and some of the UK people, and some of the European people. We got everyone, like
all the people.
Got all the people.
Not to be peopleist. I think today 4 o'clock. Mike Bledsoe still going strong in the Instagram ads.
Who? No way!
Oh my god.
Mike, you're done. Your time's over.
TheStrongCoach.com. He sold.
He sold.
Did he sell? I assume he sold Barbell Shrugged.
I don't think there was anything to sell, was there?
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
When? Back in the day or no?
Back in the day, ages ago. I think he left them years and years and years ago. Like.
Mike Bledsoe's. Jeez, they were not good at weightlifting. That's all I can remember. It was a great podcast when it was there. It was like the only one.
Good podcast, yeah.
It was like them and Jug Life.
Actually, they were much better podcasters than Jug Life.
Yeah, they were
much better.
Jug Life actually came a bit after too, I think.
Yeah. So, of everyone who's online now, it'll be very, very helpful if you could like this video, and then if you have any questions, as always, pop them up. And we'll get going once you're good to go. What's your plan for the evening, Garth?
Training.
What's on the training regime for this evening?
Is no foot stuff and front squats. But as I say, my right knee is a little bit owie. Not owie enough to not do anything, but it's just like owie enough. They're like, oh, my knee is owie. What are you doing?
I'm doing those 400s that I was supposed to do earlier today, which will be great fun. And then I'll probably squat as well, depending on how terrible the 400s are. I think 400 is the worst distance for running.
Wait, you have to go the fastest, but it's still long enough.
Yeah. I thought the mile used to be the worst, but I think the 400s are the worst. The mile pace is so much, I don't know, there's something about a 400 is just grueling.
Having not ran 400s in maybe a decade, I don't remember. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
You know, how's the track? Is the track any better?
Running 400s on a track, I think, is worse than running 400s on a nice straight road.
Why? How many laps of the track is it?
One.
One lap of the track.
Yeah.
That's grand. What pace are you aiming for this evening?
75. So the first two will be a warm-up. They'll be really slow.
Yeah.
They'll be like barely jogging.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll do 2 or 3 at 90-second pace, which is 6-minute mile pace. And then I'll do the majority of the working sets at 75 seconds.
And you squatting after?
Yeah.
There's no way you can squat and run the same day. That's impossible. That's lunacy.
Apparently so.
Why are you doing that? That's crazy talk.
It's disgusting.
You're crazy. That's
so
crazy.
Uncomfortable. Stephen G. I wonder if that's Stephen Gerrard who used to play for Liverpool.
I'd say there's a distinct chance it is. You know.
It probably is. I bought the Road to Anywhere a couple of years back. I'm about to move, but since I've been squatting much more and some change of onset from time to time, anyhow, once moved, can I get another program? Yeah, just email us. If you've bought the program before, just email us. Or just reply to the email you got first day, and we'll send you an updated one with your new one around.
Joe Rourke is saying I've got deadlifts tonight, but can't be arsed. Motivate me, please.
That's not our job, Joe.
Do you know this? A lot of people talk recently. It's like there for the last 2 years. And I think this is primarily driven by Joe Rogan, right? Where he's been talking about, or a lot of people have said, like, motivation is overrated. Discipline is what matters.
Mm.
But the only reason you need your discipline is you're motivated to do
it's all the same spectrum.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't do things unless you're motivated for the outcome from them.
No.
So like it's a moot point to just say that.
Yeah. It makes it's like Jocko Willink being like, I'm just so disciplined to get up at 4 a.m. every morning and work out, you know.
Yeah.
He does that because he's very motivated to get up at 4 a.m. and take a picture of his alarm clock. Like that's.
Well, I think he is a psycho, you know.
No, but
you've come around to Jocko.
I like Jocko. This is nothing against Jocko. I don't hate Jocko like I hate the other people that are in those similar circles.
D. Goggins.
But motivation and discipline are the exact same thing. Discipline doesn't exist in absentia of motivation.
Yeah.
Like it can't. It can't. You can't just be
it's crazy talk.
Some sort of non-emotive person whose brain doesn't work. So yeah, if you're a vegetable who got hit in the head really hard and you can't, nothing is working, then you might have discipline in absence of motivation. But for most of us, I don't think you can.
Do you know, last night I was training and sometimes you don't feel kind of great, you don't feel super good, you know. But even though you know most trainings don't feel like that anyway, and then you make this mistake in your head and you get into this thought process that you're like, damn, this training's not even worth it, and you don't even know you're thinking this directly, and you're like, oh, I'm not sharp. But it doesn't have to be sharp. Like, you just have to be training. That's all that matters. And then it was like an instant release when I thought about it. I was like, it doesn't matter if you're not sharp. You just still have to do the things you need to do. And I did both of the things I need to do, you know?
Yeah.
You can make this mistake where you're like annoyed at yourself. You're annoyed at the universe. You're like, oh, I don't feel great today, so this training isn't going to be worthwhile. And then you also mistake the mistake of thinking you should be sharp.
Yeah.
Like you've done something wrong, that you're not super fresh for that session, but it's irrelevant.
Yeah. Particularly in weightlifting.
Yes.
Like you shouldn't, most of your time is spent in non-ideal conditions because they're the most ideal conditions. Because you have to be training very hard. You have to be lifting heavy weights. It's not like if you were a discus thrower or a javelin thrower, right? And you were showing up to training and you were really fatigued every time, you'd be fucked. Like your distances would be very poor. If you're a sprinter and every time you showed up to your heavy or your fastest sessions of the week and you're feeling broken down and beaten down, it would be terrible. You wouldn't make much progress at all. But in weightlifting, you're lifting heavy weights and they break you down quite a lot. And it's much more a strength speed sport than a speed strength sport. Like if you're being realistic about it.
Mostly a sad sport.
Yeah, it's a sad, lonely existence. So I hope you're motivated by that lack of motivation, Joe. Puzzled says, Joe, you're weak there. Now,
harsh, fair, but true, I think.
Yeah. Chris says, congrats on the website launch. Oh yeah, so this live stream is about the website launch. There's a discount code, launch5, so you'll get a discount on anything that's on the site. There'll be more functionality added to the site over the next coming weeks. We'll have a program picker, like a little thing you can go through. We'll have some additional information up there. Contacting us in regards to getting on the books for one-to-one athletes should be easier. Contacting us about setting up seminars and training camps should be much, much easier. And then just in terms of the buying programs, the back end of buying programs is now much more efficient. So there should be less issues with it.
That was so like the appearance of the site visually, and then there was one of the main things. And then the other main thing was the back end stuff to make sure everything ran much more smoothly for people when they were buying the programs. They were the two big things. There's a couple more things coming, like the program picker and a few other things coming to the website, but they were the main things that we wanted to fix, you know, especially the back end stuff. So
yeah.
When everyone bought stuff, was the main one.
Okay. Scott Kerr says, love the new website aesthetic. Thanks, Scott. Skate961 says, what is ZMA and how does it help? ZMA is zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B6 in a very specific ratio of all three. It was invented by the guy who created Balco Labs. What's his name? Victor Conte.
Yeah.
And it's a supplement primarily used for athletes to increase the quality of their sleep. Now, Sika has something coming out in the coming months for sleep, so we're not really going to sit here and shit on ZMA because we've recommended ZMA to most athletes for the last 5 or 6 years. You know, it's very, very effective for a lot of people. They'll see better outcomes in sleep when they take it, particularly males who are training very hard. ZMA will help them get better quality sleep. For most people, I recommend, or not recommend, but kind of suggest them starting it. Most people will take like 3 tablets that are 810 milligram tablets of ZMA before they go to bed. If you wanted to try it, just stick to whatever dose it says on the pack. You'll probably need to try it for around a week or 10 days. I personally notice a difference after 2 or 3 days with my sleep, but for many people, it will take a while to build up in their system. And yeah, you get deeper sleep and you'll get incredibly trippy dreams.
Only for a while.
ZMA. Yeah.
So the regulation or the regulatory, the mechanism by which like zinc and magnesium improve sleep quality is been documented in a couple of studies and a heap of anecdotal evidence, but the mechanism of how it's a regulator of sleep is as yet unclear and is somewhat of a phenomenon in regards to the researchers. So it's not specifically why it regulates sleep under its roles in like central nervous system actions and stuff like that. So it's not particularly clear yet. My favorite one at the moment is Animal Pack. Is it Animal Nutrition or something like that? Animal are the best.
Is that the same company that's like Animal Cage?
Yeah. That's my favorite brand of ZMA at the moment. I was using Olymp for a while, but then I actually switched to Animal.
Use Olymp.
I prefer Animals better.
Do you?
Yeah, it's better. I notice a little bit better in terms of sleep. But our sleep supplement will be something similar, but there will be a few extra things that will be specifically meant for sleep. So ZMA is typically sold as that kind of performance thing, whereas it'll be specifically meant for sleep. ZMA is a proprietary blend, so it's something that you have to basically pay for a patent use, but we will have a couple of things different with a lot of nuance. And luckily we have a couple of people helping us as well. So really looking forward to seeing those. So you'll be very easily able to use the stuff as well. Like the ingredients won't be hidden or whatever. Like you'll be able to buy the ingredients separately. Yeah. It'll be hard to get one or two of them, I would think. One of them anyway. But you can still try yourself and see if it works.
Yeah, absolutely. The basic, like the Seeker product will just be easier for you to take. It will all be in the correct ratios, but all the information will be available for everyone. OM says, afternoon, for the 5-minute mile and 500-pound squat challenge vlogs, what's the thought process behind using knee sleeves for the squats at this phase in training? 100% for quad development. They just allow me to be much more quad dominant in my squats, much more upright in my squats. Really don't need that much more posterior development, even right now with no training. It's just my quads need development. Knee sleeves help me get there.
Dr. Demographics said, any advice for what aggressive fat loss? What sort of shape should my weight sessions take? I have to lose 20 kilos. So the recommendation for whenever you're losing weight, the main thing is your focus is primarily, your primarily focus is hypertrophy, so maintaining as much muscle mass as possible when you are cutting weight. That's the main priority, essentially, for any athlete. So any in-gym work for any athlete, if that's someone from general strength training wants to be better in shape, all the way up to an elite athlete, your prime focus is maintaining muscle mass when you're cutting a significant amount of body weight. Now, of course, for those elite athletes or professional athletes or sport-specific stuff, they'll still be doing a lot of their sport-specific stuff. But when it comes to their in-gym stuff, primary focus is maintenance of muscle mass, because the muscle mass is the most susceptible to loss. Strength is dependent on a variety of different factors. So you can lose the weight and you can lose some muscle mass and maintain a lot of strength. You can't maintain all your strength. But the most susceptible of those factors for strength training that can be affected by weight loss is the hypertrophy, or loss of muscle tissue or loss of contractile tissue. So main focus is higher rep sets, signaling and re-emphasizing the fact that you want to maintain muscle mass is the primary one. So higher rep training, higher volume training. So there's two kind of camps as well at the moment in terms of hypertrophy, and there's a plethora of literature and it's very hard to interpret, but there's either reps to failure or super high volume. Both of these thankfully incur a lot of hypertrophy, and the high volume one seems to be kind of at the forefront at the moment. The more you do, the more muscle you'll build by the looks of things. So that is more preferential when you're cutting weight as well. So when you're cutting a lot of calories and stuff, you're probably, I would bet, more at risk for injury. So you'd be looking for that higher volume stuff rather than higher volume and closer to failure. So maintenance of muscle mass would be your prime concern, and just accept that your primary goal for a time being is weight loss, and not maintenance of strength.
I probably have 3 things on that. So the first thing Gareth was saying there about hypertrophy being the main focus is absolutely it. 3 things I would add to that. The first thing is you need to make sure that you understand you're going to lose strength, you're going to lose muscle mass, you're going to lose the general shape and athleticism you're in now, and that's absolutely okay. It'll be much better when the 20 kilos is gone, but you're not going to be able to go to the gym and lift the same weights or run the same times or do whatever it is you usually do, Dr. Demographics. It's just going to be very different. And your approach around everything with training will be very different. It won't be a thing where you're going to eat around to fuel your workouts, or you're going to be eating to recover from workouts. Your workouts are just there to signal that muscle protein synthesis, like Gareth was talking about, to signal a lack of atrophying that you're probably going to see. The next thing is make sure your hydration and protein is bang on, and try and cut the rest of the calories from every other aspect of that. But make sure you're drinking enough water, make sure you're getting enough protein from good sources of protein, and then kind of fill in the rest of your calories with whatever you want. And then the last thing I will say is that don't be too aggressive with the weight loss in terms of the time you take to get there. So I'd much prefer to see you take 2 years to do 20 kilos rather than 6 months to do 20 kilos. You'll have much better outcomes in the long term in terms of just your general shape, how much muscle you'll maintain, how much athleticism you'll maintain, and then how well you'll maintain that weight loss long term. If you do that 20 kilos in 4 or 5 months, it's not going to turn out too well. You'll more than likely put that 20 kilos back on at some point. So longer, slower would be much, much better for that.
What's Project saying? Longer, slower, lower. That's it.
Yeah.
Scott Kerr is asking the vibes on ashwagandha. So I'm a big fan of like herbal remedies and roots and stuff. The action that they have in specific scenarios is the same as a pharmaceutical drug. Be typically things, a lot of the times, a lot of past medicines, or some of them have been derived from plant compounds, and they certainly have an effect. But if I was a healthy male with no specific issues that I wanted addressed, I would definitely stay away from any of those. And I don't think I don't think there's cause to use them. There's definitely side effects for a lot of these, and if you're using them in doses that are going to have a meaningful effect, like I know ashwagandha people have reported, it's something like kind of not emotional desensitization, but kind of a calming effect or kind of less anxiety, but then a flatlining of emotion some people have, So if you're at an issue, if you have issues, it's like people use it for stress relief. I think it's Huberman that pushed it for testosterone increasing, which is borderline useless realistically in terms of like natural people's effects. Well, not useless, but I'd say minimally effective in real world terms. So unless you have anxiety issues, or I think some people use it for sleep, if you have stuff like that, then I'm all for people trying that, especially if conventional medicine isn't helping out, which unfortunately happens a lot with a lot of cases where, going down the conventional route, seeing your general practitioner and stuff doesn't really help you. And I'll be the first to defend doctors and stuff, especially people get injured and they're like, the doctor said I'd never walk again.
Yeah.
No, the doctor said, look, it'll probably be unlikely to walk again. It'll be really hard for you. It's not that the doctor didn't want you to walk again. He's just seen 1,000 other people with your thing who didn't walk again. So he's just giving you the realistic possibility. So I'm all for doctors, but sometimes I think, maybe primary care or general medical and maybe all over the world, not just Western and Eastern medicine, I don't think there's any distinct difference, has some issues, So if you've had something that you think might help with it, and there's good reason to think it might help you, then when it comes to these kind of things, not just ashwagandha, I'm a fan of it if it'll help, because it does happen for people. Obviously, that self-experimentation is, fraught with issues and other things, so you need to be very careful with it. But when it comes to just, would I use ashwagandha, recommend it for someone who is just healthy male or female who trains, good blood markers, no autoimmune disease or chronic issues or anything like that, no, I don't think. My general feeling on that is just to stay away from those kind of things, because how long are you going to take them for? Are you going to take them forever? Are you going to keep getting them forever? Do you even know if it's ashwagandha? What are the chances it's actually ashwagandha? Probably.
That's a big thing.
Is
most of that, the herbal stuff, like you've no idea where it's coming from.
Yeah, are they growing it? And especially now that ashwagandha has gotten such a big name for itself, you've even more of a chance of it not being real because people are scamming people.
It's all test prop.
Always has been. It's test prop all the way down. People. So that kind of thing. Unless you had a specific reason to use ashwagandha and you'd seen a lot of anecdotal evidence or you'd read some papers that point you in the right direction for that specific issue for a defined period of time, like a surgical intervention, like you might with, say, antibiotics or something, then my vibes for ashwagandha are a no bueno. Not in place of like a routine supplement used in training. I'm not for it. Any of them really, to be honest.
No, I'm the most against herbal remedies man in the world. I'd be the kind of opposite the graph. Yet I'm using some kind of very different herbal stuff at the moment on the advice of a consultant. So things can definitely have their place, and they can have their place for like sports performance and for general health. But certainly ashwagandha wouldn't be something I'd be looking into. The other thing I would say is like, and this goes for test boosters, test increasers, natural test boosters, and all that. If you're a normal, healthy male, and assuming you're not going through some sort of age-related decay or injury-related decay or something along those lines, or imbalance,
the entropy of the universe.
The entropy of the universe is weighing on you. Having higher test levels really isn't what you always need to aim for. It's completely different if you're an enhanced athlete and you're
yourself.
No, if you're an enhanced athlete and you're spiking your test levels and you've some ability to control that ratio of estrogen to testosterone. If you're doing something like a T booster or ashwagandha that's going to inherently boost your testosterone in some way, you're just going to increase your estrogen in the same way. And most of us don't want massively increased estrogen, And then you have to look at what happens after you stop taking ashwagandha. If there was any actual increase in testosterone that came along with that, what's going to happen to your estrogen markers after that? Like, is it just going to decay off at the same rate? Well, it won't decay off at the same rate. They won't just immediately drop down, and it won't immediately all be okay once you stop taking it. So I would just give you that word of warning that, like, it's not always, particularly for sports performance, it's not always more test is better, And
okay,
no matter what everyone will have you believe, it's not always more test better. Okay, now that all that's out of the way.
Why are you lying to them?
Okay, Unmec says, currently running Sika pull, but I don't have access to a kettlebell for a double kettlebell RDL. How can I replace it? Just use your barbell. You're going to lose out on some of that kind of stability work from side to side. Certainly if you're one of the... Okay, if you're maybe not an incredibly strong athlete and the appropriate loading for you would have been 10 or 15 kilos in each hand, you can certainly just pop your hand through the hole in the plates and you could use a plate in each hand. If you train at a public gym that has those kind of tri-grip plates that have a fairly easy way of holding on to the side of the plates, you can use a plate in each hand and you'll get that kind of side-to-side steadying and that unilateral work to make yourself more stable. That'll be very beneficial. But in the case where that doesn't exist and you just have normal bumper plates and it's hard for you to hold on to the bumper plates, then just use a barbell with plates in them and that would be absolutely A-okay. Sean Creed says he's unlocked the key to steady state cardio, and that's a stationary bike plus chess on the phone equals heart attack.
I don't mind chess.
I like playing chess. I've never played chess virtually. I'm a demon for playing Sudoku. That would be my thing. Maybe once a week.
Strange. Fighting God's special operation for the propaganda of gains commencing. Voluntary subscription of all viewers recommended. Apply by clicking the subscribe button. He's dead right.
Yeah, please do subscribe.
Also, there's 64 people now and 25 likes. It's a terrible state of affairs. To Subasa said, my right angle is much less flexible than my left. I stretch it every day before training, and it helps it in the immediate term, but not the next day. Did you know that, Joe? You had that coke again?
My nose is killing me.
Why is that, Jim?
It's just been... I've had a blood nose every day for the last 3 weeks.
Like Ralph on Simpson said, you're either picky too much or not enough. But not the next day is back to normal. Is it possible to gain and maintain that flexibility? So a big thing people make the mistake of when they're talking about flexibility and stretching is that we make the assumption when we do a stretch that it should permanently remain passively flexible. And this isn't the case. We wouldn't expect this with our cardiovascular system. We wouldn't expect this with our strength training. We wouldn't expect this with our speed. We don't expect any other modality of training to remain actively passive and at 100% to that newly gained performance. We know everything decays off and loses our ability with them. And flexibility and stretching should be thought of in the same fashion. But as with the other ones, you should see some maintenance. You don't lose everything all at once, all the time. You lose some of it slowly over the course of time, and some of it then plateaus and doesn't lose anymore. And mobility is of the same fashion. So it should be possible to gain and maintain a lot of it, but you'll never really be at a stage where if you're not using it, then you won't, like, you're not going to lose all of it. Or if you're not using it, you're not going to keep all of it, I should say. So you just have to stay on top of these things. If you're able to do a stretch, a good sign of a stretch is if it immediately improves the range of motion straight after doing that stretch, then that's a great indicator that stretch is effective. If something doesn't work immediately, if there's no improvements, there's not going to be improvements after a month of doing them. However, the time between your baseline, what you improved after doing the stretch, and then what you got back to after a certain period of time is kind of dependent on the individual person. I would say if it's not, the baseline is not improving, if the baseline is not slowly coming up all the time, if it's really and noticeably staying at that stuck point, I'd probably look at increasing the frequency of that stretching you're doing, increasing the stimulus so you reinforce what you kind of want that new baseline to be. So you'll never keep the maximum range of motion you got after doing that stretch for 4, 5, 10, 15 sets, but you should have that baseline incrementing a little bit each time. So the first thing I would do is if an individual or singular session is improving range of motion, then you don't need to do any more in that session. There's no point doing any more. So the next thing I'll be looking at is increasing that frequency during the day. So is it morning and evening, and reinforce that stimulus is the next place I'll be going. So if one session is working, you don't need to change what you're doing in that session. I think you just need to increase the frequency of it. And then I would bet you would see an increase in that. Barring a previous injury or something like that, if you damage your Achilles or calf or soleus or something like that, I'd say that should help you.
Okay, just some guy without pubic hair says,
Ew.
Is behind... That's such a weird YouTube name.
Yeah.
Is the behind the neck press a better shoulder builder than the overhead press? No, is the first answer to that. And it's the same way where the best way of getting strong is back squatting and probably not front squatting. You can use more weight with the press in front. So just your standard strict press, you can usually do more volume with the press in front, and you can do it at a higher frequency than you can usually do the press behind the neck. The main issue with press behind the neck is a lot of people don't have great mobility to bring the barbell back down there, and most people are quite weak in that area. Now, if you're a bodybuilder and you're really focusing on specific areas of the delt, whether that be more lateral aspects of the delt instead of anterior aspects of the delt, or more posterior than it is lateral, whatever it is, in that case where you're a bodybuilder and you're specifically looking to fill out certain areas of muscle, then the behind the neck press might be the only kind of way of getting there, in the same way where an Arnold press might be the only way of getting there for another piece of the deltoid or something along those lines. But most of the time, pressing in front of the neck will be much more effective. I know in the EWF directive, it's pressing in front of the neck for strength. No, pressing in front of the neck for technique, behind the neck for strength, which is just bollocks, and it just shows the level of ingenuity and intelligence that was brought about writing that curriculum. But pressing in front of the neck is really where it's at for most people. There's obvious caveats as well, where if your snatch is weak and you need to press with a snatch grip overhead, that's much more applicable than pressing in front of the neck. But generally, if you're looking to make your shoulders stronger, you'll be pressing in front of the neck. You won't find too many rugby players, American football players, hockey players who have great mobility to press behind the neck with a narrow grip, like, but all of them will press in front of the neck. Puzzles then, just to lead on from this, is saying with light weights and high reps, it's a good shoulder recovery exercise. I did it last night, 20 minutes ago in the gym after bar raise into behind the neck press 3x10. Just on the thing of like muscle recovery exercise, I'd always be very, very cautious of that. And that's not something you'll ever hear us talking about, of doing a certain exercise to recover the muscle. All exercise is going to take away from the muscle, and nothing is really going to recover the muscle except rest, ample nutrition, and ample hydration. And everything you do is using up energy. It's using ATP within the muscle. And so what's probably happening here, and probably the reason it feels good for your shoulders, is you're stretching the shoulders. You're bringing them through a range of motion, and then it might feel a little looser in the morning. You might feel a little bit better in the morning. But I'd be very, very conscious of that kind of rhetoric of like, it's very important shoulder recovery exercise, where nothing's a really recovery exercise.
Paul Paulson, that's not a fada, but I don't know what kind of
it is a fada. Oh,
but yeah, it's not a fada. Yeah. So just bought you in a program, Paul. So what should have happened was a new website, all on one page. You'd be able to enter your 1RMs, and you shouldn't have actually been able to go on and pay until you enter them. But I just talked to the website guy Eamon, and he is on top of it. Paul, if you email us with your 1RMs, we'll send you a PDF of your program. Apologies for the issue. We knew there might be some issues, so better to get them done sooner rather than later. So if you just email us and we'll send that over, or Sarah, one of us will get to
it. Jim Holan says, I'm starting a cut next week, but thinking about running the back squat program afterwards. Should I reacclimate to lower rep work and reattempt a max first? I probably wouldn't spend too much time reacclimating or kind of getting used to squatting again, because you're going to go straight back into a high volume phase. You'll certainly need to have some idea for where your 1RM is at, though. And so usually we say kind of 3 or 4 sessions. I take a slightly different approach in those 3 or 4 sessions, rather than kind of like just going back in, lifting a barbell, seeing roughly where I'm at, and then over the course of those 3 or 4, building up to a heavy single. I usually use something like a 5x5 or a 3x5, with the explicit understanding that 5x5 working weight is usually around 75% of 1 rep max. And I'll go in on the first day, I'll do a few sets of 5, usually in ascending weights. So I'll pick whatever, 50%, 60%, 70%, and I'll do a couple of sets of 5 or 3 sets of 5. The next time I'll go to the gym, then I'll aim to do 5x5 at that heaviest weight I'd done the week before, or the session before. The third session, then I'll do ascending sets of 5 again. And then the last week, or the last session I'll do, will be a 3x5 or a 5x5, where I'm really kind of pushing that limit. I'll have an idea from the 3 sessions before, whether it's 10 kilos more or 5 kilos more or whatever. And then whatever you settle on for that last session of 3x5 or 5x5 or whatever it is, I would set that as my 75%. I divide that number by 75, multiply it by 100, and you'll have a rough idea for where you're at. Obviously, if things go really, really well, and you come out with a number that's far in advance of your old 1RM, you're doing something right. But don't use that to buy the program.
Where are we going? Tom, Tom, 2 Toms. Tom saying Thames are great, but can't fit into these trendy Levi's. You know what? Levi's make great jeans.
I'm wearing Levi's right now.
You are actually. They last forever.
Yeah, they're great jeans.
No, great jeans. They don't lose their shape, I think 512s are the great ones for
I think these are 512s.
They
might be 511.
I got a great brand in Barcelona. They're all just like Be Normal or something. It was like, I think it was like a counter thing, because everything in Barcelona is really like trendy European city, and there's just like nice normal clothes, and I got a really nice pair of jeans for like a third of the price of Levi's.
Oh,
yeah, Barcelona's great for shopping.
I got jeans last year from the Denim Company, or one of those
out there.
Yeah, but they weren't Levi's. They were. It mightn't have been from the Denim store, because I got the Levi's from the Denim store.
I'm all about linen.
Anyway, I got jeans and they're great.
I'm all about linen shorts this summer now again.
Linen shorts?
Yeah, linen's great. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Linen is the
You're
best.
way out there.
No, it's because
you're way out there. Shirt all the way open.
Sweat.
Sweat.
Yeah. Jeans are not friendly to sweat.
I wear the same clothes every day.
Sure.
I wear a pair of jeans and a black Sika t-shirt.
Fucking weirdo. Tom of Fat says, lads, any chance of getting a sample week for some of the programs on the site? That is one of the new features that will be on the site very soon. So it's just be able to get a sample week or a sample.
You'll see what a few of the sessions will look like.
Yeah, see a few of the sessions, exactly, yeah. No, that's a great point. That is definitely something. So we didn't want to put up everything all at once. So we just want to make sure everything works when we put it up. So that will definitely be something that's up next.
Tom then is asking any way to squat and deadlift while reversing the dump truck. So I assume you mean getting a smaller arse. The main thing with reversing the dump truck is that you just go into a calorie deficit and you start losing weight. In terms of losing weight,
do you think that's what he thinks? I think he's just making a joke. You've gone too deep into the slang there.
Wait, but he's talking about can't fitting into his jeans.
Oh, sorry, you follow on. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, maybe you're dead right. Sorry, continue.
So the main thing is you go into a calorie deficit and you start losing weight in general, right? The issue with losing weight is that you can't really pick where you're losing weight from. Now, I will certainly say that you can pick where you atrophy from by not stimulating that area. So like deadlifts are probably grand. Squats to a certain extent are probably grand. Certainly the higher intensity, lower volume squatting will be pretty good. But there's no real way to really choose exactly where you're going to lose that muscle tissue from. Okay.
Chris is saying, all right, Owen, you were in chemistry or biochemistry in uni, right? Yeah, biochemistry, and then into the pharmaceutical industry where it sucked the soul out of me. And will there be restock of training pants? Sure, there won't be a restock of those training pants because it'll be a stock of new training pants. So Seek Strength Performance pants.
They're sick.
2.0. They look, so made a couple of additions to them. So corrected some of the material at the bottom. The material ratio material we're using is still staying the same. We've changed the colors and some of the appearance stuff. And then we've added a waistband with a waist tie instead of gone for the elasticated waist with the self-tightening kind of mechanism. This is one where you can tie it in. So I think it looks a little bit nicer and it's definitely more practical.
Yeah. James Frasorelli says, hi fellas, I'm back after 8 months off. Great to see you still succeeding. Great to see you back after 8 months, James.
Thanks, James.
Skate961 says, any recommendations on brands of ZMA and what I should look for in terms of doses? So Garth loves Animal Pack recently.
Yeah.
I use Olympic.
No, it's just a limp.
I used to always use bulk powders, and to be honest, I just stopped using bulk powders because bulk powder took like 2 months to get an order to me when Brexit hit first because they shipped it from the UK instead of from Ireland.
And you pay taxes, the fuckers.
Yeah, so I'm not doing that dance anymore. What I use usually is an 810 milligram capsule by 3. That's good for me.
I just do whatever the manufacturer recommends on their thing, and I think that's usually safest.
Yeah.
But Animal Pack or Animal is the one I like to use.
Puzzle said, how to deal with super dry skin shedding from my hands, moisturize. The last thing I would ever do to your hands is moisturize them. Or use any product on your hands. I think that's a great way of really messing up the skin on your hands is by using some sort of product. I would just wash your hands immediately after you train, get all the chalk and all the grease off them, look after them. If you have loose skin, cut the loose skin off. If you have calluses coming up, get a pummel stone to those calluses. Don't cut the calluses with a razor, even though that's what we do. I would just pummel stone your hands, make sure you've no buildup of calluses. Wash your hands not overly frequently, but directly after you train. You have to get all that chalk off.
That's the most important thing you can do.
And no moisturizer. Stop using it. It's messing. You're getting.
I wouldn't say stop using it.
You're getting baby hands.
You just are afraid. You're afraid of
any moisturizer touching me.
You're afraid of skin products.
Is never ever a good thing.
The main thing is to wash your hands immediately after training, especially if you live in a very non-humid climate. If you're a dry, humid climate, leaving chalk in your hands for like an hour or so after training is definitely the worst thing. If you're in a very humid climate, it actually isn't a massive issue because your hands will be so moist anyway. But washing your hands immediately after training is definitely the big one. Ashley Wang is saying, hi guys, nice website. Thanks, Ashley. Q for all, is there a certain percentage of body weight that smaller female athletes should be looking to gain in the first 1 to 2 years of weightlifting or shouldn't be a focus? So the main thing with this would be if you're a younger female athlete. So if you were, for example, between the ages of like 12 and 18 or something, you just started weightlifting, you would like to see a nice kind of linear increase in body weight when you zoom out over those kind of 6 years or so. So you'd like to see, you know, maybe something in the region of, could be up to 10 kilos, maybe something like 5 kilos. As a later start for an adult female weightlifter starting, it depends on what kind of composition you'd start with weightlifting. You know, if you start with a higher percentage of body fat, you know, if you're north of 20% for females, or probably north of 25% maybe, you could have, looking at the actual kind of scale or weight on the scales wouldn't be the best option. If you'd a way of measuring lean body mass, I think you'd be looking at something, you would look maybe a little bit. You would certainly want to see a certain change in body weight within the first 2 years. 1 to 2 kilos would be pretty reasonable, I think, of lean body mass, for assuming they hadn't done any other sports before. So sometimes you'll see athletes come in and they'll have done like track and field, or they've done gymnastics, and they'll already have done that up to a very close time to when they've started weightlifting. So they'll come into weightlifting in already pretty fucking great condition, and they'll maintain that condition a lot easier. So typically you'll see female athletes after they see sport will generally maintain similar conditions after they stop that sport. So typically when you see those, if a lot of times female athletes come into weightlifting as an adult, have done stuff like that, they've done, you know, judo, or they've done gymnastics, or they've done sometimes they'll have done powerlifting, they'll have done a lot of track and field athletes, and you'll always see them, they'll already be in good shape. So they'll kind of gotten very, very close to the lean body mass that they'll have hit, or close to their max potential, I suppose. So you'd like to see, certainly some weightlifting will definitely be the most amount of strength training they'll have done, unless it's a powerlifter. So some would definitely be, you know, it'll happen, I would say, and it wouldn't be a main focus. You wouldn't be looking at the female athletes any different to the male athlete in that regard. You wouldn't be going, okay, we're definitely going to need to gain some body weight. The only time you'd ever really be looking at gaining body weight in a primary focus would be with teenage athletes. So most time with teenage athletes, you might even force that body weight gain, but you'd certainly be monitoring body weight gain. And if the athlete has been training for 2 or 3 years and they haven't gained more than 10 kilos in most circumstances, then you'd be kind of concerned for a teenage athlete. But for female athletes in their 20s, if they've done other stuff and they're already in a decent condition, you wouldn't really be looking to force it. Really what you'd be looking at is, did it happen? And if it didn't happen, was there a reason it didn't happen? And if that reason it didn't happen, is it a good reason? Then you can, okay, fine. If they came into, you know, there's plenty of female Irish weightlifters I think of who came into weightlifting at like somewhere in the region of like 15% body fat, having done other sports before. They improved their lifts by like 20 kilos each over nearly 10 years, and their body composition stayed very, very similar, unless or in spite of or because of weight class changes, but not really as a performance increase, I would say.
Yeah, one thing I would say on the body fat percentage for females is you're dealing with drastically different ranges, you know. Even if you're looking at like female sprinters in the Olympics, you're talking about, for the male cohort, an average of 9% body fat will be very, very standard. For the females, you're talking about an average of 15% body fat, you know, and that's incredibly lean. If you see a female at 13 to 15% body fat, they look like an Olympia bodybuilding competitor, you know. So I would just be highly conscious of the body fat percentage thing. Most of us now, like, if you're used to listening to this channel, you'll hear about 15% being an aim for a lot of males to get the. For females, average for normal athletic populations would be 16 to 23% body fat, and that being very, very healthy, and that being very normal and very positive for adaptation, positive for athletic outcomes. The other thing you really want to be conscious of as well is, if you are in that group Gareth talked about, where you're kind of coming in slightly higher and maybe dropping down, you really need to make sure that there's an end goal in point, or an end point in mind. Like, you're not just dropping down continuously, because females will lose body fat quite easily. Now, not as easily as males will, but you'll continue to drop body fat. But for females, when the body fat gets to a certain low point, the consequences are much more drastic than it is for males, you know, particularly younger females, but definitely lower body fat percentages are much more detrimental to performance and to general health in females than they are in males. So you really do need to keep an eye on that if you're planning to drop body fat percentage or whatever.
One thing as well is for female athletes, sometimes the body weight issue can be more of a sensitive topic. Across all kind of athletes or all sports. So it's just something as well that you just need to be conscious of, and be conscious of how it'd affect you. Changes plus or minus either way, getting leaner or gaining weight, it seems to be more of a more frequently, like per 100 feet for athletes, per 100 male athletes, 100 female athletes, you'll see that there's more of a potential for the body weight gain to have more sensitive psychological issues, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, that can be dealt with, of course, if done in a smart way. Should be no issue, but it takes a bit of prep, I think, and awareness of what is coming, down the line with it, and if it's something they're kind of committed to. You don't see it as much with men. Typically, what you'll see with men is they'll be kind of fine for a lot of time, and then eventually get to a stage where they're just too fat, and then they'll just be really upset that they're fat. But the problem with men is they won't do anything about it for ages.
Yeah,
they'll get to a point where they're severely overweight, not happy with it, and they'll just do nothing about it. They'll want to do something about it, but they'll go absolutely nowhere with it. Whereas when I see a lot of female athletes, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not happy with this," and then unless they have to stay out there, they will correct it. Which I think
to be honest, I've seen females have much more issues at the opposite end of the scales.
Yes,
than it will with males. Definitely, like 100%. If you're anywhere near thinking that could become an issue, I'd just be getting bloods and tracking everything immediately. Like female athlete triad syndrome is incredibly serious.
Yeah.
What do you think about the female 64 European session? Did you see that?
So we watched the 59s yesterday, I think, and I watched the 55s. I didn't see the 64s.
Yeah.
Did something happen? I don't know. I didn't hear anything either.
That was on today, I think, was it?
Maybe it was
64s,
actually.
I think it was.
No, I've been flat out.
Vladimir Roosevelt.
Great name.
A very Cold War name. When's the next merch drop happening?
I'd confidently say July would be.
Confidently speculate on the end of July.
Like, there's a thing. What's the quote? It's like speculation only works if it's not about the future or something. Our speculation never works, especially when in regards to the future. So I would say the way things are going, July is super, super possible towards the latter end of July. We only have two things for this merchandise drop. It's new and improved pants and a graphic t-shirt. And we're so excited for both of those. I'm really looking forward to seeing.
We got some pictures of the pants today and some for the samples, they're being sent over, and I could not be happier with those samples.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it'd be great to get them in our hands. And we're meeting the t-shirt people on Tuesday.
Yes.
So that'll be great. Okay, Miguel Lavado says.
So he went down to 89 from 93, and he hit PBs. Very suspicious, Miguel. Very suspicious. What's a good end of year goal to shoot for? Thanks again for all the help. A good end of year goal to shoot for, assuming you've gone from 110 to 120, 155. I'd like to see you. 25 would be a great progress. 125, 160 plus, 160-ish would be honestly great progress. 125, 160 would be very, 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 very good progress.
Yeah.
If you're particularly talented, or you're particularly talented at one of the lifts, then maybe 130 would be feasible. Or usually what you'll see with people at 120, 155 is they might be great at the snatch, but they're just good athletes,
Yeah.
And they're like the 165 could be something they could bullshit their way into,
Yeah.
So you'll know yourself which one of those you are. But I think 5 kilos onto both of those before the end of the year would be superb.
No, that would be très bien.
And anything beyond that would be fantastic.
Shmup 117. That is a hilarious username. Shmup. Hey lads, I have a question. Just to let you know as well, that comes from it's like a Cork and Irish thing. We'd say mup. Be like, come on, like mup. I have a question. Is it possible to train push press together with standing or seated military press on 2 different days of the training week? You could certainly train them together on different days. You could train them together on the same day. A lot of weightlifters will do strict pressing and push pressing every week. I would say you need to kind of look at which one's your priority. For most people, you'll start off with strict pressing or military pressing, and then take a weightlifter's example. You start a block with strict pressing or military pressing, and then you might start that seated, quite high volume, build the weight up a small, but then go to standing strict press, same width grip as your jerk or your push press. Then you'll slowly bring in the push press. Then the push press will slowly take priority. Then you'll make push press, and you might focus on jerks from rack a small bit more, and that might take place over the course of 3 or 4 months, or 6 months even. In terms of if I was prioritizing the standing strict press or the standing military press or seated military press, I wouldn't be using push press as something that was going to help it. Push press won't really be the thing that will really add to your standing military press or seated military press. Certainly the seated strict presses and standing strict presses will add to the push press, but it's not vice versa. So yeah, you can certainly do it. Puzzle says he does it or they do it and help each other.
Ray Reynolds is saying it's not possible to good morning squats, but here's my 290 and I did not good morning this.
Yeah.
And that was no belt.
No.
Why did I squat 300 then? For fuck's sake.
Because you're a loser, like.
No, I am a loser.
Rad Reynolds.
100%.
Rad Reynolds says, hot take, good morning squat is to some slight degree impossible to avoid at max effort for literally everything. That's not right.
That was so easy.
Anybody who squats incredibly quad dominant, Gurf would be a good example of that. A lot of elite weightlifters would be great examples of that. People who are very good at squatting with their quads and using their legs quite a lot, very knees forward, very upright in the squat, won't good morning when they fail a squat. Because that's when you go into failure, you naturally regress to secondary positions, and the secondary position will usually be regressing more towards your bias, right? So for me, if I'm failing a squat, I'll fucking good morning it every day of the week because that good morning position is really strong for me. I'll try and deadlift that squat, when Gurf is failing a squat, Gurf will be more upright and his hips will go more forward, and that's just how Gurf fails a squat. He'll regress to a secondary position, and that secondary position will bias towards his own particular strengths.
So one thing I don't regret about
away
that
from his weaknesses. Go on.
Is not going to 95. I don't regret that one bit.
No, you'd be more of a loser.
I'd be more of a loser.
If your max squat was 295 and you didn't do 300, you'd be.
No. I'm glad
I don't think we could run a company together.
I'm so glad I never went to 295. And at the time, you were like, why did you go 295? And I was like, I'm not a loser like that.
Yeah, but I assumed you were going to make 300 quite soon after.
You, me, both, buddy.
I didn't think it was all just going to stop.
No.
Jeez, that 290 was so fast.
Yeah. Fuck's sake. I'll be back. Anyway, you're wrong, Rad. You're wrong, Rad Reynolds.
Yeah. Anyway, you're wrong.
Crash is saying, love the site. Thank you. Over the last years, I've lost 170 pounds. You've lost a person.
That is insane.
You should look for that person. That's probably your child. Like, you should go look for that person again. And I've started working towards bodybuilding. Curious if you know of non-invasive loose skin solutions, thoughts, meta studies on this. Right. I've only one thought on this, and I've heard 1 or 2 people speculate on this. And that the loose skin will go away by itself. And the other thing is it's subcutaneous fat that you haven't lost yet. I don't know if they're true. There's obviously not a lot of cases of this, or there's a lot of cases of this, but the vast majority of those people end up getting the surgery, I think, from what I can see. We're not really the best person to talk about this particular thing, but as you said, thoughts on it. I've heard some people speculate that it's still subcutaneous fat that you haven't lost yet and that'll restore over time. My gut instinct thinking about this, I have to imagine there's a way for your body to correct this eventually, given if you're under a certain age.
Under a certain age, I think, and the vigorousness or the speed of the weight loss, 77 kilos over 2 years is massive.
And as well, how massive was that person?
Yeah.
If you were enormous, I'd imagine there's probably a certain threshold elasticity of your skin that you probably wouldn't get back. But the skin is renewed very, very aggressively over the years. So
the other thing you kind of have to think about as well is blood flow.
Yes.
And if the skin is hang in a certain way, you'd imagine blood flow will be restricted, and then you're not going to recover in the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm by no means an expert on this, and I'm very much speculating on this. I do know in the case where the person didn't eat any food for a year and just took a multivitamin and water, and they had no loose skin. So I wonder, is it the fact that in some way those fat cells are still quite active in the case of somebody losing? I really don't know. I'm a bad person to talk about this.
I wouldn't begrudge anyone who got surgery for getting rid of loose
Jesus,
skin.
no, definitely not. I imagine it's quite invasive, and
I also would imagine there's no like long-term consequences to that. You know, when there's like, if you got like fake boobs and you start getting infections or your body starts rejecting them or something, I can't see any long-term consequences of just getting the skin removed in some ways. You know, I can't imagine, but of course, who knows?
Who knows? Not us anyway.
Yeah, not these guys.
Okay.
Currently have the Back to Training Waves program on a cart. Looking forward to getting back on track. Al Belletti Gaming, we're looking forward to getting you back on track. Crash is saying, puzzle, I was looking at this a little bit. Oh, he's talking about magnesium oil. Is that more of a fact during or after? I don't have a ton of skin can show, but some of it is very visible. Yeah, I could understand, because you could be waiting around for a long time and not know if it's going to go away.
Yeah. Also, I would say, like, in the case of those like magnesium oils and stuff, I just wouldn't be. Yeah, there's a reason people get surgery for a lot of things, you know.
Great job on losing a person.
Yeah, that's insane going. That's phenomenal training.
Lost a whole person.
Yeah,
you lost Luz Arjun.
Yeah, you lost one of the best weightlifters in history.
Can we have him back, please? Salikama is saying, can I belt squat reps at 20 to 25, even though in strength block, quads are a weakness and really hard to get any pump or soreness to them? Not in the strength block. If you're close to the end, I wouldn't be going as close to 20 25. If you watched our Hayden series, where we're getting Hayden to a part, Haiti Babes. If we're watching Haiti Babes to the powerlifting competition, we had him still doing like kind of 10s to 12s. On belt squats, I honestly wouldn't really go below 10s and 12s anyway, but I wouldn't be going towards that 20 25s, because in general, it's probably not enough weight. So I prefer in the strength phase, as the strength phases are want to do, is a bit heavier weight and kind of lower in the reps. So I prefer to keep those reps in the 10 to 14 range rather than massively upping the repetitions. Do more sets, if anything, rather than higher rep sets, because I don't think the trade-off will be worth it in terms of the rest of your training.
Okay, will you pick a few questions?
Okay, Scott Kerr is saying, so what I'm getting at is, instead of ashwagandha, use gear. Yes.
No.
It's all turtles all the way down.
Just as prop all the way down. Sean Kavanagh says, been using 9mm knee sleeves for squats, and they add around 10 kilos to my 1RM. They want to do that. Any drawbacks using them all the time? Certainly. So using knee sleeves all the time will limit your overall training in terms of your stability, in terms of your motor pattern recruitment, in terms of just general squat skill. It definitely will hold you back a small bit, particularly for people who might be unstable in the bottom. Is it unstable or unstable? Unstable. Instability, but I am unstable. Yeah, that's it. So certainly it can hold you back there. I wouldn't use them all the time. You'll see me doing this whole cycle with knee sleeves, but it's for a separate issue we talked about earlier, you know. And certainly lack of stability isn't my issue. I have loads of issues, but that's not one of them. So I'd be conscious of it. I'd be conscious of using them all the time. Also, a lot of time people use knee sleeves to cover up knee pain, which is very, 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 very bad idea. And you shouldn't do it as the person who's done that before.
Emmett Brown is saying, for testing athletes, in my experience, they don't ever get tested in team sports. So would you see more of a benefit in testing a 3-rep max or a 1-rep max bench on squat? Is it just one of safer, psychologically less scary for young lads? It really depends on what sport they're playing, what kind of attributes they have, how good are they at the gym stuff, what is their kind of long-term goals in terms of the sport they're playing. It would depend on a few things. For example, if this is rugby, you'd definitely be looking at that 1RM bench. I would imagine most teams would do that. If it was kind of left up to an individual bias, you'd probably be just keeping them at the 3RM like you do. You'd see what the 3RM is. You'd see how fast it's moving, has that 3RM gone up 20 kilos since the start of the off season? Then you're like, yeah, perfect. We don't need to look at that 1RM. If they want to test that 1RM, will you let them do it? Absolutely, if it's feasible and you trust them as an athlete. But in a team environment, I think there's a lot of variables there that would affect the 1RM thing, in my opinion.
I've got a little hot take on S&C using 5RMs, 3RMs instead of 1RMs.
Mm-hmm.
First thing is you have to test probably 25 or 30 athletes in that session in those couple of lifts or couple of aspects. And getting a 3RM is way faster than getting a 1RM. So in a 1RM, you build up obviously to higher weights. So it takes longer to warm everybody up and get them up there. The intensity is higher, so they need more of a break in between. And then they need more attempts because they're like, oh, I could do 5 kilos more. I can do 10 kilos more. I can do 5 kilos more again. I can do 10 kilos more again. So it takes a lot of time. You tend to bump up. With 3RMs, it's really simple. You go to an overall lower weight, so it takes less time to warm up to it. And then once you get to a certain level, you'll get 1 rep, 2 reps, or 3 reps. And at that point, you get really valuable information on all that. If they can only do 1 rep, you found a 1 rep max. If they only do 2, you found a 2 rep max. And if they can only do 3, you found a 3 rep max. Only one of those options allows you to go heavier. And most of the time, you'll have garnered information or gathered information over the previous 3 reps. So it's very, very clear. If I'm watching 5 or 10 squat racks at the same time, it's really clear that Gerf over there smashed all 3 of those reps versus Gerf over here who really struggled on his last 2 reps. And it's much easier to make the decision as to whether they go up again. So it's not necessarily always like people will say it's a safety thing. And there's people out there who run S&C programs who think it's a safety thing. But in fact, it's a much more efficient way of testing people. In my opinion.
For the bench as well, you're probably safety thing as well as for the 3RM or the 1RM. Both can be equally disastrous.
Yeah.
Especially for
3RM squats were way more disastrous.
Yeah, real heavy, especially if everyone's hyped up, especially if it's a team of young lads, if they're all know they've been training hard, they've all been training together and they know they're likely to get better and they know everyone else's numbers and they know what their numbers are. The likelihood they'll push themselves super hard for that 3RM. It's more time under fatigue at a heavier weight than they've done before. So there's a possibility that the 3RM is actually even more dangerous in some scenarios. But if you're in a good environment and you're coaching them to the weights, the 3RM in terms of like athletic attributes for the squat, for example, would be something I'd probably stay closer to. And then for the bench, you'd probably look for that 1RM, but you wouldn't really be getting that true 1RM for most of them. I think you'd be looking for a faster 1RM, just slightly heavier than last time, ideally.
Okay, I have 2 questions left. Bathroom Man says, is it possible to go on such an obnoxious bulk that percentage-based programming goes out the window, sort of like Shane Hunt doubling body weight in a 10-month scenario? So no is the answer. So the first thing is percentage-based program, you just need to be on the correct program and the percentages will go up correctly and that will be applicable to your case. The other thing is on obnoxious bulks, a lot of time what we're gaining isn't going to be muscle tissue. So you're just going to be gaining fat. Now you'll effectively you'll move more weight and you'll be stronger, but it won't be that crazy that your program will still be drastically underdeveloping you. The next thing is the fact that going a bit slower with the weight increases will just allow you to be a better athlete overall. Like you'll have better movement patterns. You'll progress for a longer time. It's not necessarily that you're going to miss out on all these gains because you gain 10 kilos in your bulk. And the last thing is people make phenomenal progress when they use performance enhancing drugs and they all use percentage-based programs. And it's really applicable in that case. It doesn't necessarily have to be like you don't see people like that using like RPE programs and stuff. So you just it needs to be the correct percentage-based program in the same way where it needs to be the correct percentage-based program for anything else. The last question then is Ritik Nair. And he says, I don't have a belt squat machine. Can I replace it with a dumbbell sumo squat? Is there any difference? There's a massive difference. So the main thing, dumbbell or belt squats are great for developing your quads. They're great for keeping your knees forward for a long time, really targeting the quads. But the main aspect of a belt squat that's so useful for your coach, so useful for an athlete, is that it doesn't load the spine hugely. So it loads your central nervous system because you're firing a lot of neurotransmitters down that spinal column. But in terms of mechanically loading the spine, it doesn't really happen. It's happening around a belt that's on your hip girdle. You're all pretty good to go. Your spine won't be massively fatigued after it. You need to be very, very conscious that if you do something like a sumo dumbbell squat or a sumo kettlebell deadlift, it's going to load your spine, and you won't necessarily be able to do the things where 3 times a week you do 5 sets of 15 at heavy weight, because you're loading your spine in all those times, and the spine will be degraded or fatigued in those cases. And when you go to do your weightlifting or powerlifting in the sessions afterwards, you'll have a negative effect because of that.
I'm done.
I'm done too. Thanks very much for watching. We'd really appreciate it if you did go to the new website, have a look around, tell us what you think. We'd appreciate it even more if you went to the new website and you bought things. We love when you buy things. And we'll talk to you all again later on in the week with an actual Q&A live stream, I think.
Oh, look. Declan, everything was shipped out. So we did have like 1 or 2 cases and a few
One or two things came back to us here, but your name isn't here. Declan, will you just email us right away, just your order number? We'll have a look into it. Everything was shipped out, so I'm not sure, unless it's still in that kind of returns loop and coming back to us. So we had 1 package from the US and 1 package from Romania come back. So if you could email us, we'll get it sorted, and we'll get that on the way to you again.
Thanks, guys.
Nice. James Dillon Fulbright PB'd again.
Oh, perfect. Unreal.